tonight we have Eric as my special guest host. I know a lot of you guys have been waiting for it, for Eric to be part of this. We're going to be discussing, if anybody has ever had any questions or ever been curious about Vlad the Impaler, the Romanian Count Dracula, and how his tie-in with Dracula's castle in Transylvania, the legend, the myths, the truths, and everything about Vlad. Well, here's the guy that did the research for you on it tonight. So what we're going to do is, first I'm going to go in and I'm going to do my little weather thing and that I normally do. Well, actually, no, we're going to skip that tonight because we're just going to go right straight into Vlad. Eric has done a lot. I'm going to start out. We did watch, if you ever seen the movie Dracula, the Untold. Is that right?
Dracula Untold.
Mm-hmm. It is a really, really great movie. It's about an hour and a half long. It does tell the story of Vlad and how he became Dracula, and how it was all about how he was raised by, I can't remember what the group was.
It was the movie called the Turks, but it was part of the Ottoman Empire.
Yeah. And how he went and he murdered and helped them conquer, and how he went and became ruler of his own kingdom, and how he turned to the direction that he went to save his kingdom. Well, the movie has a lot of truths about it, but there's also a lot of false information about it. So if you want to catch that movie, the Hollywood version and the more glamorized, where how they actually made him into an immortal person, sucking the blood and becoming a vampire, and that whole legend and story behind that. That is a wonderful movie. It's amazing. It's actually kind of like a really heartfelt story too, but of course with Hollywood and myths and legends and stuff like that, there's always something that's just quite not right. But Eric will tell you how Vlad got started, because he was, how many? There was Vlad 1.
Well, Vlad 1, you really don't hear much about. It was just mainly his father, which was Vlad the Second, or Vlad Dracul, and there was Vlad the Third, which we all know as Vlad the Impaler, known as also he was known as Vlad Dracula. Dracula was the family name.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. It was Dracul, which that's how they got when they did the movies and the stories and that about Dracula. That's how they come up with that name, because they got it from the actual family name of Vlad the Impaler. But there was Vlad 1, Vlad 2, and Vlad 3.
Yeah, just mainly, you just really need to know Vlad the Second and Vlad the Third. So, and of course, Vlad the Third is...
Well, good Vlad evening, B Squared, which I got to find out how do you know how to make her a mod?
I don't.
We have to get her and make her a mod yet. And good evening, Kiwi. You guys are always on here. I'm hoping she got a notification this time. Good. I switched something up on YouTube. Instead of just going one area, I did 2 different areas on it, and then I also went on the other side on my Facebook page. So I'm there. If one doesn't show up somewhere along the line, the notification should show up. So, but with that, we're going to have Eric go in, and we all know him as Count Dracula from Transylvania and Vlad the Impaler, but there's a lot of myths about that. So Eric can get started.
It's pretty interesting, because I'm kind of glad you mentioned Dracula Untold, because in my opinion, I think it's the best movie that was it was the perfect marriage between historical aspects and vampire mythology you would hear throughout Eastern Europe. And I'm going to start off by talking
just
a little bit
about... Just 1 second. If during any of this time here, and Eric, you can watch too, if any of you guys have any questions as he's talking, because I know I'll interrupt him like I just did now, just ask away. We'll pull up or we can ask a lot of the questions at the end, but don't worry. There are three Vlads, right? But
it just
yeah,
that's actually uh,
a whole lineage of them.
because Vlad the Third did have at least three sons, and one of them was
Another Vlad.
another
Okay,
Vlad,
so there would
and
have been a whole lineage of Vlad. So, but this Vlad the second,
Vlad the Third
third.
is the Impaler.
Okay, the Impaler. Okay, so we got that out. So if anybody has any questions, I'll let it up to Eric if he wants to stop if he sees the question and answer it, or however he wants to do because the show's his
Yeah.
now.
And mind you, I will be looking at you. I'm going to do my best of my ability. I did do a bit of research on this, but unfortunately, because this was towards the end, the tail end of the Dark Ages, most of what we know of Vlad the Impaler wasn't really about his early life or his later life. Most of what we know is like during his time as ruler. So I'm going to do my best of my abilities. I'm going to look at chat to see if there's any questions that I'll do the best of my ability based on the research that I was able to do and answer those questions. But yeah, without further ado, I might as well talk about Vlad the Third. Like I said, he was more famously known as Vlad the Impaler. His given name was Vlad Dracula, which was the family name. Now, Dracula is actually often mistranslated as meaning demon or devil, but Dracula is actually the Romanian word for dragon. And the cool thing about the movie Dracula Untold is that they incorporated that with his army and the dragon armor. And there are accounts that he did wear dragon armor during battle as well. So that part of it is accurate.
And it is very cool, not to interrupt Eric, if you watch Dracula Untold, there is a scene in there where he has his armor behind closed doors, and at one point he pulls it out, and it is dragons. It's a very, very cool piece of armor.
But yeah, not really unfortunately not really a whole lot. I mean, we do know a little bit about his early life. He was born somewhere between 1428 and 1431. He and his younger brother Radu, who I'll be talking about later because he becomes important in the story of Vlad the Third. But he and his brother were actually given to the Ottoman Empire by their father, Vlad the Second. Uh, and this was just and the boys went willingly to pretty much show that they were loyal to their father. So they pretty much grew up in the ranks of the Ottoman Empire, and during this time, their cousin, the Vladislav, would actually be ruler of Wallachia, which is the land where Vlad the Impaler would eventually rule. But the actual title of a leader in Wallachia at the time was a voivode, which was a military leader or warlord. So during Vlad the Third's younger life, Vladislav, his cousin, would end up being voivode of Wallachia, which if you want to know exactly which we can bring it up right here, well, I'm going to show you a map of exactly the territory that we're talking about here. And that is a common misconception too. Vlad the Third wasn't actually in Transylvania. He actually resided in Wallachia, which I'm going to go ahead and bring up a map right here. But yeah, you can see on the map right there, Wallachia, which I know it looks like it's pronounced Wallachia, but I'm actually using the proper Romanian pronunciation of it. I know that's weird, but I like to make this as authentic as possible because I want to make sure I got the P's and Q's of the historical aspects and give this the respect that it deserves. But you can see Wallachia is actually settled south of Transylvania, which Vlad the Impaler would end up launching a military campaign later on, but he would end up being during his time. Vlad the Third would actually be voivode of Wallachia himself during three separate periods of time. And don't go
So
ahead.
you're saying then that Vlad, when he was captured, he was an Ottoman. They
Yeah,
captured him.
yeah. Well, he was actually. They went. Well, from what I understand, they actually. I know. I said that the dad gave them he and his younger brother to Ottoman, but they actually were more I did research, they actually went willingly to show their loyalty because during this time the Ottoman Empire was a huge empire. It was the remnants of the old Byzantine Empire from the old Roman Empire. And they had a stranglehold of pretty much all of Eastern Europe. So all these little countries, say like Wallachia, Transylvania, Moldavia, they would end up paying tribute to the Ottomans, and Ottomans would pretty much ask for anything from resources to even people, and that's what the Wallachians were pretty much doing that because they were actually supplying a lot of the soldiers to the Ottoman Empire. That was basically their tribute to the Ottoman Empire, and he and his younger brother Radu would end up being part of the ranks there. Don't mind me, I'm gonna be looking down at my notes from time to time. Yeah, Transylvania it's actually a region of Romania. It's actually the northwestern part of Romania, and Wallachia would be kind of like the southern part of Romania and going into the northern part of Bulgaria.
And the movie that we're talking about, B Squared, if you want to watch it, which there's some parts of it that does touch the actual history of Vlad, but then it goes, of course, way off because of Hollywood. But the movie's called Dracula Untold.
And Kiwi, I saw the Ottoman Empire ruled it. They did hold most of the area. Like I said, all these little countries right here, they were sovereign, but they did end up paying tribute just so they wouldn't end up getting invaded by the Ottomans. It's just pretty much their way of saying, "Hey, we're our own people," but at the same time, you know, it's.
I wish they would stop that.
I really wish they would.
If you
stop
hear
it
a
too.
noise in the background, our dogs are they're losing their shit tonight. I don't know, full moon or what, but something's going on with them.
So what ended up happening was, I know I mentioned Vladislav earlier, and what he would end up doing. Oh, you're welcome, Linda. No problem. Feel free to ask any questions. I'll do my.
That's B squared.
Yeah, that's
okay, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, both of you.
But yeah, sometimes I get lost in
Mhm.
talk about. Sometimes I don't, which I do apologize. Which Mom, you're probably gonna have to help me with
No,
that.
no, you're fine. You're
But yeah,
good.
this is something I'm a history geek. So
He is.
but
He's. We call him our resident nerd.
so Vladislav, which I mentioned before, he would end up. What would end up happening was I'm not exactly sure. I wasn't able to find out exactly what went down, but um, let me see here. Let me make sure I get this right. See, um, Wallachia was actually you'll see up in the upper north left hand corner of the Austrian Empire. That section that you're seeing on the map right there is where Hungary was. And Wallachia actually had good relations with Hungary. As a matter of fact, Vladislav had a good relationship with the king of Hungary. His name was John Hunyadi. And what ended up happening was he would end up launching a military campaign against the Ottomans. Like I said, I wasn't able to really find exactly why he decided to do that, but he ended up having getting assistance from Hunyadi, and he would end up launching a military campaign against the Ottomans, which, as strong as the Ottomans were, was mostly unsuccessful. And it was because of this that relations between Hungary and Wallachia actually started to deteriorate. And it was this time that Vlad the Third saw this as an opportunity. He saw that Vladislav was being pretty much stretched a little bit thin. He's trying to deal with the Ottomans, but at the same time trying to keep peace with the Hungarians. So he saw this as an opportunity. So what he would end up doing is that he would end up Vlad II would end up gaining because of Vladislav falling out of favor of Hungary. Vlad III would end up coming in and he would gain the favor of Hungary. And it was because of this that Vlad III was able to go into Wallachia and he was able to battle and kill his cousin for control as ruler of Wallachia. And that's pretty much when his reign of terror began. Ottoman Empire was so big, it's covered several continents. Oh, absolutely. And it's like I said before, it was pretty much the remnants of the old Byzantine Empire, which was the eastern part of the old Roman Empire. And especially during the Middle Ages, they just expanded and expanded. And they were a big deal, or they were definitely up there among the more sizable empires alongside the Mongols over in East Asia. And what would end up happening because of Vlad III end up usurping his cousin? He not only did he usurp his cousin, but he also cleansed the noble court. He would get all the nobles that were still loyal to Vladislav, and he would end up offing them, and he would get the nobles that were loyal to him to strengthen his position as new voivode of Wallachia. And it was also during this time, which this is where the Transylvania part comes in, because he would end up invading Transylvania. He would end up capturing the people, and this is where his legend really comes to kick
Now, some people think he was a nice guy. Some people think he was a nasty ass.
Well, he's considered as a national hero of Romania, but that doesn't really mean.
But he wasn't really a good guy, though. He was pretty nasty, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, Joseph Stalin is a national hero of Russia.
Yeah, that's true.
But
people think.
But yeah, that's another thing. You know, he is regarded as a national hero, though. I mean, in real life, he was. But what he would end up doing, he would actually just to get a stranglehold, try to get more of leverage in that in order to go against the Ottomans. Like if the Ottomans ever crossed him to assert his power, he ended up invading Transylvania. He would end up killing a lot of Transylvanians, but he also bring a lot of them back as captives, and a lot of captives would end up getting impaled. Hence, Vlad the Impaler. Now, word of his cruelty was pretty much renowned. It
gets pretty graphic how cruel he got.
So during his reign, of course, I mentioned before, Ottomans asked for tributes. And what the Ottomans would do when they sent the envoys, they would be wearing turbans. And Vlad III would want the envoys to remove their turbans. The envoys refused. So what Vlad III would end up doing is he got 3 large metal spikes and he nailed them in their heads to keep them from taking their turbans off. And he sent them back home or back to the Ottoman Empire that way. Some of the envoys don't even go back to him, and he would just kill them. And some of them he would get, because Vlad III not only was he proficient at impaling, but he was also he had a proclivity for flaying as well. So what he would end up doing to some of these people is he would flay the bottom of their feet and force them to walk barefoot with no skin on their feet. So we couldn't recruit them. Yeah, and he was merciless too. And he would impale them. There's some stuff that I can't even say on camera that it's just too. It bothers me. But he was quite proficient at torture devices too. As a matter of fact, one of the most popular ones, if you want to call it that, was a big copper cauldron. It pretty much worked the same way as an iron bowl, but it was a big copper cauldron, and it had a lid made out of wood with holes in it, where the victims would just have their heads poke out, and they would light a fire. Well, the cauldron was filled with water, and of course the victims would be in the cauldron. He would light a fire under them, and the victims would literally cry until they were boiled to death. But
yeah, he was not nice.
Where did he learn his torture techniques? A lot of them. I mean, he was a very wicked individual, and a lot of them he actually.
Do you think that he learned some of them from when he was captured before he went on his own? Maybe that's what he saw those people doing?
I mean, that's certainly, but I mean, unfortunately, I wasn't really able to find a whole lot in terms of that particular aspect of it. I know he did have a wicked this time. I'm sure a lot of it had to do with the kind. I mean, if you were ripped from your home and forced to live and doing being in the military ranks, growing up in the military ranks of a powerful foreign empire, I'd be a little bit in the head too. So
yeah,
I mean that definitely did not help at all.
Yeah.
And they were cruelly invented back in the day. In the day, they certainly were, and that's why they called it one of the reasons why they called it the
Yeah.
Dark Ages. You know,
Yeah.
they had plagues. Of course, society as a whole declined. You know, we didn't have as much um, intellectual advancement. We didn't have any
But then you even
technical
go to more
advancements.
modern times. So if you think about it, look at the time of Hitler. Look at what Hitler's regime did to people during the Holocaust. I
Hmm.
mean, there was some stuff that was so graphic that you would run to the bathroom puking. That's how
Hmm.
bad. So it's kind of some of these emperors or kings or dictators, whatever, and that they carried some of that nasty shit on with
Yeah,
them.
they did. And it's even said that Vlad the Impaler, he would get the blood of his impaled victims, and he would dip his bread in it, and he would eat it. And we'll get into the vampire stuff in a bit, but where
So do
that's
you think
kind of
that's
like,
kind of how where the vampire whole legend thing came about?
hmm.
Yeah.
But like I said, we'll get to that here in a bit. But I mean, the bloodlust was there. Vlad the Third was definitely a bloodthirsty son of a gun. But what ended up happening was because of him doing all this to the Ottoman envoys. He just wanted peace in his land. I mean, in his own wicked way, you know. I mean, we talk about
Yeah, yeah,
dictators and
and I
that
think
get
that's how they list him as hero because he was doing it for his own land and his own people. But you can only go about things a certain way to make it right.
yeah, like doing the wrong things for the right reasons,
Right,
so to
right.
speak. So he would end up getting and launching himself a military campaign against Mehmed II, who was Sultan of the Ottoman Empire at the time. And what ended up happening was, don't mind me, I'm just referring my notes that way I don't misspeak, but he would end up, when he launched his attack against the Ottomans, he went to sought the assistance of the King of Hungary at the time, which his name was Matthias Corvinus. Now, unfortunately for Vlad, things ended up going south. The military campaign didn't go the way he wanted to, and Corvinus was not thrilled with Vlad III, so he would end up imprisoning Vlad III in Visegrad Castle. He would end up staying there for over 10 years. And Visegrad Castle is not Castle Dracula. That's not the famous Transylvania castle.
I wonder why, even to this day, though, like they say, if you want to tour Dracula's castle, they tie it in that it was Vlad the Impaler's castle. So, in other words, when they're having all these people go through touring the castle, they're telling them a big lie because you
Well,
said Vlad never lived there.
well, the actual castle that they claim is Dracula's castle isn't even Visegrad Castle. It's actually Bran Castle. That's on the border of Transylvania and
Hmm.
Wallachia. But a lot of people say that's Dracula's castle, but there's no historical evidence that he had a permanent residence
Residence
there.
there, yeah.
They said that he stayed there, but there's no proof
Hmm.
that he actually resided there. So, like you were saying, that's pretty much
All just like kind
like
of, yeah, rumor.
was like he was a Christian. He was definitely a Christian. I believe he was a Catholic.
Why are all the, I hate to say it, but why are all the Christians the nasty asses? Even in our worst like situations, like if you check like Dahmer, he was raised in a Christian family. If you Charlie Manson, David Koresh, Jim Jones, like all of them are proclaimed Christians,
uh,
and
I kind of don't want to say because I don't touch on religion, but
yeah,
all I'm gonna say is there's a reason why we don't learn about the Crusades in school. And the reason why is because if you actually go
Christianity.
down to brass tacks, the Christians did as much cruel things as if the Muslims did. But I'm not. That's all I'm gonna get into that. But I mean, if you want to learn more about the Crusades, I'll
Yeah, the
let you guys do
holy
that in a bit.
wars
It's
and all
there's
that. Yeah,
reasons why we don't
yeah,
learn certain
yeah,
subjects in school, and
yeah.
that is definitely one
Yeah,
because there is that
which is
touchy.
ironic because they won't let you practice or talk about
It
Satanism
is
in
scary B
school.
squared.
But and if you draw attention, there's a very thin line between Christianity and Satanism. I mean, there really is. There's a very, very thin line through it, and it's just like, okay, here's the line, and it's just like how the scale's tipping. Like
Well, if you
it's
think about it, again, not getting into religion, but Lucifer was
A fallen angel.
A fallen angel,
Yep.
because he loved God, and of course, Jesus would end up being the Son of God, and that ties into.
Yep.
But
Yep.
like I said, we're not.
We don't touch in on
Yeah, we don't
religion,
get
but
into
it
religion,
is
but
very scary. But it does to show how if you can look at Scientology right now, that's a scary religion. A lot of people practice, and it's a very touchy subject. But then people have problems with the paranormal and stuff like that because I think it's dabbling with the devil. And most paranormal investigators are religious of some sort.
yeah.
So, okay, continue.
Can't remember if you learned it in school because of your love of history. I mean, they do touch a little bit. I mean, they pretty much say what it is. They pretty much give like a brief summary saying, "Oh well, we got all these countries that are non-Muslim speaking now because then we got all these consolidated Christian states." But I mean, that's all we learn.
When
We
I
don't
was in
really
school,
learn.
we learned just what was written in the books and they brushed over it real quick, and that was it because as we're finding out now, a lot of our history is bogus. They're like Christopher Columbus. Everything Christopher Columbus discovered America, which really he didn't discover America,
No,
but
there's Amerigo
he was,
Vespucci.
yep, that was America Vespucci. But at the same time, he got credited for discovering America, yet he was a nasty person if you read up on the history of Christopher Columbus.
Yeah, and we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, that's a whole other show.
But yeah, Vlad would end up being, like I said, he'd be in prison for over a decade in Visegrad Castle by order of Corvinus, though he would end up being released in 1475 by order of Stephen III. Now, Stephen III was the king of Moldavia. As you can look at the map on the top right, Moldavia borders Wallachia to the northeast. And so he would end up getting, and by order of the king of Moldavia, he would end up rejoining Corvinus's army to launch yet another attack against the Ottomans. Now, during the time of Vlad III's imprisonment, his younger brother would end up assuming control, which I mentioned earlier, Radu would end up being the new voivode of Wallachia when Vlad III was in prison. He would end up being usurped himself by a man by the name of Basarab Lyota. And what he would end up doing was, what ended up happening was Vlad ended up driving Lyota out of the throne, but Lyota would end up coming back. And either 1476 or 1477, the exact date is not known, but Lyota would end up killing Vlad III in battle. But
Cactus said hi. That's why.
Oh, hi, Cactus. I'm sorry about that.
I'm sure she doesn't want you to know. Wave. I said hi. I waved.
But yeah, that's to talk about which I'm gonna. Let's see. How do we do this? Because I want to show what Vlad the Impaler
Just go back down to present.
Actually look like.
No, go back in.
Yeah. No, I did. I was.
It should all be on there. Now, which one are you getting?
I'm gonna get the pictures of Vlad. I'm gonna show you pretty much what, and I'm also gonna read a description that somebody had documented on. Now, I was a little bit wrong yesterday when we watched, or was it the day before we watched Dracula Untold? Was it yesterday? Or the day before?
Yesterday.
No, I did say he was a big guy, but he actually wasn't. I'm actually going to read an account of his description from a person by the name of Niccolo Madrusa, and this description is actually found in a chapel of St. Stephen's Cathedral in Vienna, Austria. And he was described as not very tall, but very stocky and strong, with a cold and terrible appearance, a strong and aquiline nose, swollen nostrils, a thin and reddish face in which the very long eyelashes framed large, wide open green eyes. The bushy black eyebrows made them appear threatening. His face and chin were shaven but for a mustache. The swollen temples increased the bulk of his head. A bull's neck connected with his head, from which black curly locks hung on his wide-shouldered person.
So this picture right like here more or less might be more similar, do you think, of how they describe them?
Yeah, I would say so.
But a little stockier,
Yeah.
short and stockier.
No, they say despite his because B squared hit the nail on the head. People were shorter and smaller, and that is
Yep,
definitely a
yep,
fact.
yep.
But it was the way, it was his gravitas in battle. You know, it was the way he carried him. He fought. There's several, especially the Holy Roman Empire has documented his tenacity in battle. He said he fought with the strength of several soldiers, which we saw that in Dracula
Yeah,
Untold. And it made him his tenacity and ferocity and his violent nature made him a very formidable opponent in battle. And that's another of another aspect of the legend, so to speak. It's almost like the way that people talk to him back then. It almost has that almost supernatural twinge to it.
I think with the lust for blood too, kind of brought all that into the whole image that was drawn to him too.
And but yeah, speaking of his tenacity and his cruelty, I know I've mentioned the flaying and the impaling. He was even nasty when he was captive in prison. As a matter of fact, they said that he would get rats and he would either cut them to pieces or he would nail them to wooden planks or wood pieces of wood to remind himself of his cruelness and wickedness.
Yeah,
So yeah, even throughout his entire life, they just that lust for blood just never.
yeah.
It was an insatiable appetite to spill blood, so to speak. He
Now,
did actually fight, yes.
did they believe in vampires and that kind of paranormal or supernatural stuff back in that time when Vlad came into play?
It is said that yeah, they did because they hold it's how can I describe it? It's pretty much held in the same way as like what dragons were. You know how dragons are mythical
Right.
creatures, but yet they're revered. That's kind of like how vampires were, especially during that region of Eastern
So,
Europe.
do some of the
So,
people back in that time then do they think that he was so strong, as strong as what he was, that somehow he did have supernatural powers or vampire like powers?
and that's actually I'm glad you did because that's actually a good segue. Which of course you guys know that Dracula was written by Bram Stoker. And Stoker was actually diving into the history of. Now, he didn't really know a whole lot about the history of Transylvania before he wrote Dracula, but he took a dive into it and he saw the mythology of vampires and that because he was writing a vampire book, he was drawing inspiration of who his lead character was going to be. And he happened to come across an old history book that had Vlad the Impaler. And he saw about his bloodlust and he saw how it was in the same region where people held were pretty much I don't want to say revered, but pretty much believed to some extent vampirism. And there were some people because like I said, there's been accounts that he drank and ate people's blood. So there's actually accounts of people actually believing that he was a vampire.
Yeah,
And like I said before, his
that would
tenacity
explain.
in
Yep.
battle, he fought with the strength of several people. Oh, and another interesting thing is they actually found out, and they actually took samples of letters he wrote when he was alive, and they back in 2023 they analyzed those letters, and they come to find out that he may have had hemolacria, which was a condition where he literally cried blood. So
Wow. Wow.
I mean, it's a very rare
Well,
condition.
well, could it be from how much blood that you ingest then by
That's a
could
good
that cause
question.
it? Because like it's far fetched and way, but okay, like if you eat a lot of carrots, they say your urine could be
That's
orange,
like if you eat
or
a
your
lot of
skin will
beets.
turn orange. They beet your urine will be red, like different things like that. Do has to your knowledge there ever been any ties because of the consumption that amount of blood that could cause that condition?
That's a good question. I actually because I'm a little something about me. I get a little nauseous about when it comes to talking about blood, so I really don't get look into a little to a whole lot about that. I just I just pretty much saw the definition of hemolacria, and that's just pretty much all the research I did on that particular condition. I did see it was rare, though. But I
So
mean, it's
Kiwi asked, did his troops fight? And then he took credit for it. And then the next question after that was, what's it called again when you cry blood?
yeah, it's called a hemolacria. I have it typed in on the thing, but yeah, it's a rare condition where.
So this one here too.
But yeah, going back to your which I kind of alluded about, which I kind of. But he actually did fight. I mean, he fought with his troops, and of course, he would lead military campaigns and that, and of course, his troops. I mean, during the entire siege of Transylvania and getting the people and that, there's a large part due to him and his tenacity, and his troops would see that, and his strength would give them strength to do what they did. So
when Kiwis did his troops fought, but he took credit for it, or
I won't say. I mean, he's credited as the leader of the troops, but
but they know that the troops actually fought for him because they
yeah,
were fighting under him.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. That sounds like I have research to do, Diane.
Don't people seeing or talking, but yeah, I did because that a kidney. I don't think it is a kidney issue. I think it has something to do with because it has to do with I guess with the tear ducts. And I'm not. I think it could be. I mean, that could be a brain issue. That could be an eye issue. That could be
we'll
a
have to research
cardiovascular issue. I mean, like I said, I didn't because I get kind of nauseous.
We're
and thinking
somebody
about
in the
blood,
medical
so.
field. We need to please explain that. We need to. Okay, whatever. Go ahead.
But going back. But I'm trying to think of where we said because I remember earlier on I said we'd get back to that later because we're gonna get into
about the vampires and how that got tied in and everything and that with him getting that reputation.
Yeah. So what ended up happening was that he, like I said, Stoker would end up seeing Vlad the Third's name in history books, and he would see his bloodlust, and like I said, he saw where he read where he had people claim that he ingested blood, whether drinking it or eating it or whatnot, and he saw the family name Dracula, which at the time he did not know it meant dragon, but then again, it is often mistranslated as meaning devil or demon. Now, his original name for his character was actually supposed to be vampire, which is spelled Vampyr, which is the Balkanese word for vampire. Right. But then he saw the name Dracula, and he's like, "That's the name of my character."
At one time though, didn't they go by the name Vampire though before they went into Dracula?
They did. Yeah,
that's what I thought.
Now, and the funny thing about Vampire, which ties into the movie Dracula Untold, which in the movie Vlad would end up meeting this, what would you call him, undead thing guy.
Right, yeah. Some kind of a supernatural, spiritual.
He would be called a vampire. And he was the one that gifted Vlad his powers. And the rule was he was supposed to go 3 days without consuming any blood. And during this time, he would get supernatural powers. But if he drank the blood of a human within that time, he would stay in that state forever. Right. And that the vampire or undead vampire, head vampire, whatever you want to call him, would be free to enact justice on the one that did him wrong.
Now, do you know at all, does the legend of Vlad, Count Dracula, have any correlation to Nosferatu, the legend behind Nosferatu?
I wasn't able to find much about that, which I'm sure there has to be some connection.
Yeah. Which is first? Which was it, Nosferatu or was it Dracula? You know?
I think it was Dracula. I could be wrong, but I think it was Dracula.
I'll have to check. Maybe that week, maybe we can do Nosferatu.
We could do it. I mean, we'll be watching that movie eventually anyway. We'll probably do a video on Nosferatu as well.
There is a group that I saw on I Spook Paranormal. I
See,
don't know
I've
if
never
any.
watched Buffy, so
Yeah, I
I
did. I did.
so,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. There is a paranormal group called I Spook Paranormal that has done a big documentary or book or something on vampires. And because a lot of people don't like to talk about vampires and blood and everything, nobody wants to have them on the podcast. I said, you can come on our show anytime you want and be glad to discuss it. So, who
And
knows?
vampire lore goes way back to 1047, so yeah, they've had. I mean, this folklore of vampirism.
Now, what was the
Is
period, the year that you said Dracula and Vlad all came about? What was the year 14?
Well, Vlad the Third. You mean what time period he lived?
Yeah.
He was born somewhere between 1428 and 1431, and he died at either 1476 or
Okay.
1477. Exact years aren't really well known because, unfortunately, this was at the tail end of the Dark Ages. Some of the history has been lost, unfortunately, but
There you go.
there we go.
Okay, go ahead.
And then she added long before last
Blige, yeah.
1400s. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
But which I didn't do research on Nosferatu. Is Nosferatu actually part of Vampire, or is that something completely
I
different?
don't know. That's why I just
Because I didn't look up Nosferatu, I just looked up
yeah.
Vlad.
I just
So
didn't
I
know
mean,
because I think a lot of people have in their
which
head.
I should have looked up Nosferatu to be fair, but I just didn't think about connecting the two.
Well,
That's
I
my
think a
fault.
lot of people have in their mind when you think vampire, there has to be a lead vampire that started somewhere,
The Alpha.
in the lineage. Yeah. So if Nosferatu was a vampire and Vlad the Impaler was a vampire, like
Yeah, we can go ahead.
where did the lineage actually start for the truths behind vampirism and the vampire empire, so I don't know, that would be definitely something to look into
Yeah.
and check. So
Let me see if there's anything. Let me just look through here my notes here real quick to see if there's anything else I wanted to talk about here. Um But yeah, like I said before, no matter how you view Vlad, I know, like I said, he was a national hero of Romania. He did bring peace. Peace was brought for a period of time in Wallachia, especially after he invaded the Transylvanians and that. But a lot of people see him as a hero for that, but a lot of people see him as a tyrant for pretty much doing everything else that he did. And it was because of this that the whole Bram Stoker would end up getting and becoming inspired by him.
so the whole story and history behind Vlad the Impaler is, yes, he was a hero to his people. No, he was not a good person because he was a hero, but for the wrong reasons and in the wrong ways. And no, he was not really tied in with Count the Dracula cat, the Transylvanian castle in Romania, and things like that. So that kind of broke all of those myths up and brought more truths out about, no, he wasn't actually a vampire, but he might have had some kind of a dabbling in paranormal by meeting up with somebody or something that kind of was able to give him those powers, but not vampires. I'm going to bite you in the neck, vampire.
No, I'm actually very glad Linda actually said that because you do get Romanians that do get a little touchy about that because, like I said, he's considered by some to be a national hero. And if you lump him and vampires together, I mean, of course, vampires you associate with them being monsters, and I don't want their hero being a monster. So, I mean, you can agree, disagree with it, but you can kind of understand the
Well, the
people.
thing too with vampires is, even if you look at modern day vampires, they exist. Vampires exist, but
Yeah.
the modern day vampires, they do exactly kind of what Vlad did. They have a thirst for blood. They got used somewhere, whether they joined a cult or however they got into it, and they got and acquired that thirst for blood, but they didn't go around sucking the blood out of people by biting them in the neck. Yeah, some of them got vampire teeth instilled in their mouth, but what they would do is they would kill people, some of them did, or they would slaughter animals, which is graphic. And anybody watching this, we do a sorry, I apologize for any of the graphic that might come out. But they would kill animals and then drink the blood of the animals to satisfy their thirst.
Yeah.
And they called themselves vampires, and that goes on. It's there. I mean, there's people that believe they're a werewolf.
Yeah.
But nobody
well,
has
there's
any proof.
werewolfism where people grow excess
Yeah.
body
So,
hair.
but and nobody, there's no proof that they don't actually exist. Just the same as the whole myths behind Bigfoot and Yeti and all those other cryptids and stuff. There's people believe that they do exist, but nobody has any concrete proof yet. So, but
yeah, B squared was like Nosferatu was just a character though, not an actual person, right? Yeah, of course, that's my understanding from what I've seen. I've never seen, like I said, I'm a history buff, and I've not seen any historical thing yet that said that Nosferatu was or based on an actual person. I think that's just a movie. Vampires.
Yeah.
So
I'll have to check, because I thought somewhere that I thought they did base it on something that was truthful. And same as Vlad, though.
Well,
he was an actual human, living, breathing being. But look how the story progressed over the years. So I'm sure that there's something that brought up Nosferatu.
Well, the actual Nosferatu, his given name in the movies was Count Orlok, but that's not. I don't know if that's based on an actual person, because, like I said, I didn't do. I really need to do my research when it comes to that.
Incredible that if you do real in-depth history, that you find out that Vlad somehow is like a successor, his reign or his what do you want to call it? His, I don't know what the word is.
Lineage?
Yeah, well, not so much lineage, but his whole aura, his being stems from Nosferatu, how his legend started. Like,
could be.
There's
could be part of his legacy.
That's what I mean. Something like that. That would be quite interesting if we did some real in depth, and there is somehow some kind of a tie there between it.
Could be.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Could be.
So, anybody else have any questions? Confused on anything? Yeah, see, B squared even said Nosferatu was just a character, not an actual person. That, to our knowledge, yeah, he wasn't, but you don't know. You don't know, because I for the longest time didn't think Vlad the Impaler was a real person either until, when I was a teenager and in my early 20s and stuff, and that, until I started hearing the history, and then, wait a minute, that guy actually exists. And I've always had my curiosity piqued about it, but up until now, when we started getting into these different stories and origins of these people, then, as I recall, people thought the actor who played Nosferatu, which was an unauthorized movie based on Stoker's book, was an actual vampire. I guess he was a method.
I did read about
that. Yeah.
And we're talking about we're not talking about Willem Dafoe, we're talking about another dude that played Nosferatu. He was the first person to play Nosferatu, if I recall correctly. And
he was creepy. I watched that movie. It was a black and white.
There were rumors.
Yeah.
I did read that.
So that's what I'm saying, and like I said, if you're looking at a lineage of vampires, that, who knows, maybe how far in depth you go in research, maybe there could be a tie somehow. Maybe that's how Vlad got his thirst for blood to begin with.
You never know.
You don't. So it's just, it's incredible, like, what you find when you do your research. And that's why we are a family that likes to research. And it's the same as even when we're over at the jail. I've had people say, oh, this happened over there. People still claim that there was an electric chair in the Cambria County Jail.
Which there was not.
And there was not. And also, some people say, It's listed as a jail, but it was also a prison, and that can be a prison and a jail, and I can explain why. As it stands now, if it was open, it would not be a prison. It could not be called a prison. It would have to be called a jail. But when it first opened up in 1872, it was indeed a prison. Why was it a prison? It was a prison because when people were brought in, if they were sentenced to be hanged, the hangings were done there at the prison. So if you are getting executed and there's high profile offenders in that containment, it's classified as a prison. And there was death row, high classified prisoners in that prison, and they were executed there also. So that's what the difference is. If it was just like Joe Schmo who robbed a store down the street and he was put in there, which they were too, because there was no discrimination there. Everybody, they were all thrown in together. You could steal something from a grocery store and be a serial killer, and you'd be all put in that same prison.
Yeah, there was no discrimination.
There wasn't. There was no discrimination whatsoever. There was no diversity whatsoever in that prison. But when 1910 came and they built that annex on, and they stopped the executions at that prison, then it no longer was a prison, it became a jail. So if that kind of...
And we see a lot of people in chat, they always thought that it's the same with me. I always thought jail and prison were interchangeable too, but then I
they are different. But that one right now, literally, because of the history behind it, if you call it Cambria County Prison or if you call it Cambria County Jail, they both are correct.
Right, yeah.
Because it was a prison and it is a jail.
Yeah. So it was that.
It is
was
definitely...
both during some part of its history.
We're going to get into a whole new subject. I'm going to be talking about my old Smitty. I might do that one live too. How long did prisoners stay at Cambria? It depended, because even up until the time that it shut down, they had hardened criminals in there and small town boy criminals in there. And some of them, they could have been in there maybe for a day. Some of them could have been there for a couple of weeks. Some of them were in there for years. Yeah. So depending on what their sentence was, if they were in death penalty, because they still had death penalty prisoners in there even after the new part was built on. But when it came to their time to be executed, they were transported to Rockview State Prison, where they, at one time, they did the electric chair and they stopped it. They did hangings there too, but they did the electric chair, they stopped it. They also did lethal injection. Yeah. And that's even today yet. I think if they would do an execution, they would have to go to Rockview. Yeah. They would not be able to be done in a lower caliber place like that. So that's why when the annex and that was built on, I can't remember the exact year. I think it was 1909. The annex was built in 1910, but I think in 1909 is when they stopped the executions at the prison itself.
Yeah, it was Jacob Hauser
and John Fellows. It was a double hanging.
Those were the last two.
As a matter of fact, I think there was supposed to be a third one. I think there was supposed to be a third one at that time too, when the third one didn't get hanged. It was John Fellows and Jacob Hauser. It was a dual hanging. I think it was like February 11th or something like that in 1909, I think. And once that stopped, the prison went from county to state. And when it was changed over to state, that's why the executions had to stop there at that place. No longer had to go to Rockview.
And not to mention that electric chairs weren't even used as a method of execution in Pennsylvania until around 1912 and 1913. So by that time, Cambria County Jail would not have had the legal authority to carry out.
Well, see, and that was the other thing too, when they were saying that. When was electric invented?
Well, Ben, that was during Ben Franklin. That would have been late
Yeah, what?
18th century.
Yeah, what about what year? Remember?
No,
I don't know either. But I think a lot of those, like that part of the prison, I was in 1872. I'm gonna have to check that date. There might not even have been electricity throughout that whole building at that time, not
there's a
until
chance
after
it
the.
could have been, but I don't.
I
I
don't
don't
think
know.
so. I don't think the electricity was brought into that building in particular until they built the annex on.
I'm gonna say probably yeah around
Yeah,
early
I think
20th.
when
That
they
would probably
brought
be
the
a safe
annex,
bet.
yeah.
That would be
So,
a safe bet.
but I mean, there's a lot of history. It's like we started talking last night when we was on here with Abby and we had our fun oriented night. There's a lot of rumors. There's so many over at the jail, and I literally on that whole electric chair thing. There was a lady. She said that she worked over there, and she knows for a fact that there was an electric chair down in the basement. And don't tell me you don't know what you're talking about. I worked there. And I said, ma'am, I'm the facilitator of that place now, and I had to do history on that whole building in order to be able to do the tours and to be able to say it properly. And I even talked to the warden that worked there when the annex was built on, and he said that there was never
Gabby's
any
floating
electric.
head.
What's that?
Linda putting Gabby's floating head.
Gabby's floating. I had floated a lot last night. But yeah, so there's a lot of myths even surrounding that place. The biggest, of course, and is not only a myth but a mystery, and that of what my next topic is going to be about Old Smitty. So I'm sure anybody that comes on, they're going to have a lot of questions to ask about that too.
Yeah.
So, but does anybody else have any questions?
I want to get into that one I did
What?
have popped up. Linda did have the one about maybe during the USSR days it helped build up the vampire legend. I mean, that certainly is a possibility too. I mean, Lord knows. I mean, especially during World War II, the Russians did experiment with people, the Nazis did experiments with people. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the Russian sleep experiment, and that was I'm very and I'm not going to get in this, but that's a whole entirely
Well, we
different
know how
thing. But
Russia's been and how their reputation, I mean, even is today. So they have that history of some really pretty
well,
nasty shit.
I've heard stories about what they did, during the Cold War, especially during like the Olympics and stuff. What they would do to the star athletes, it's horrific. And I mean, I know that really it has not. I mean, it kind of goes on because I mean, who's to say that this research that they didn't have some inspiration by how vampires affect people supernaturally.
And then you get into a lot of
And
those regions. What did a lot of those regions get into? You get that. You get even Germany. What did they get into? The Nazis. They were big into the occult.
they were.
And look at Aleister Crowley. He was an occultist. I mean, a lot of these old Western and Eastern Europe countries, continents, were all dabbling into the supernatural and occultism and all that kind of stuff. So that could all definitely, that is a very, very good question because they could have all tied into the whole vampire legend easily.
And you go back to talk about the lore of vampirism that came from Eastern Europe. During World War II, one of the most prosecuted, or should I say, targeted people, well, prosecuted people, besides the Jews, were the Gypsies, which resided in Eastern Europe. They would have been very knowledgeable, probably, about vampire lore and that. Who's to say that either Nazi Germany or communist Russia or even fascist Italy didn't drive them out because of that? Maybe there was a little bit of belief of vampirism.
And then, like I said, when you get into that part of the world, they believed in that type of stuff. Well, even if you get like in Asian culture, they believe in
Yes.
a lot of that type of stuff. So,
Yes.
I mean, any of that could definitely cause an uprise in the whole legends. And I mean, you don't know. I mean, that's where research is such a great thing. And you're going to find out about us we're not going to claim we know everything, and we're going to
Oh
we're
no.
going to say stuff, and we might say something wrong, and we want you to call us out on it. But I can tell you this, and from my own personal, if I do research, if Eric does research, if Gabriella does research, we don't look at Wikipedia. We go,
You have to
we
reference.
cross reference, we get a little bit of information here, a little bit there. If they kind of all correlate, but then stray a little bit different in some way, we write it down. We make sure that everything we get is accurate is what we can get and what we can find and present to you. But again, like I said, if you see something or hear something we say and you're there like, no, that's not, I did research and that's not what I found, let us know, because you could have found something different than what we found. That doesn't mean we're right on everything. We're just going by what research we did find by cross referencing. So hopefully that cleared up a lot of stuff for a lot of you guys too.
Yeah. The West were terrified of what the USSR were doing. Yes, they were. And that's why it was so important, especially for the West, to get the heads up over the Soviet Union.
I think everybody's still terrified what the USSR are doing. I mean, that's what's causing problems right now. And I mean, I don't want to get into politics or anything, but that's what's causing a lot of problems now, you know, that here we are. We know Russia's got ties with the United States.
Yeah.
But I'm shutting it off right there.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, history is always static. Yeah. So does anybody else have any questions regarding either Vlad? Eric, you can ask something about me or Eric that you're curious, whatever, because we are at the hour mark now, and I think Eric did an incredibly informative show tonight for us.
I'm not used to being in front of camera, so I mean,
yeah, he was very, very informative, and I will have Eric on like this again. He can choose a topic, or you guys can choose a topic that you're interested in. If right now, if any of you have something that you want him to look up, I'm sure he would be more than welcome to.
And there are going to be topics that I'm probably going to want to talk about on here that I'm very passionate about, that I wouldn't mind sharing with you all. And
is there something you have in mind now that you'd like to do next, or
a couple things? I mean,
well, maybe maybe they can choose for you which one. But if you guys
I got a lot.
Linda, B Squared Cactus, any of you go on my other side Facebook page, make suggestions on there. How does Eric survive with his sisters? Eric can answer that for you.
With great difficulty. No, seriously. They're good sisters. It's just, I mean.
Let me tell you this about Eric and his sisters.
It's a sibling thing.
Eric is a good guy. He really is. But Eric is a sap. Sorry, Eric. You are. He's a sap.
I am.
All they need to do is say, Eric, can you do this for me? Or can you go get that for me? If they know he's going over to the store, Eric, can you pick this up for me? He does not know how to say no to those two girls. He doesn't say no to me either. But he will, if he can help those girls, even if he's very, very limited on finances, if there's something over the store that they want, he will go and do it for them.
I'm the eldest of the three. I do have an older sister.
Yeah, he's not the oldest. When I have an ex. Tom is my second marriage. My first husband, I had my daughter, Nancy is my oldest, and then Eric is the next, and that was to my ex, and then Gabriella and Abby. It would be Abby and then Gabriella to Tom, and that was more than enough. So.
I appreciate that, Cactus. I do my best to be helpful. I really do.
He does, and I will tell you one thing else about Eric. It's not like my other kids won't, but even if I don't ask, and he thinks I need help on something, he will come and get up and help me no matter what. He does the dishes a lot regularly. We don't have a dishwasher. We hand wash. He does most of the dishes. Um, if I say, Eric, could you help me for a couple seconds? Doesn't hesitate. He gets up, helps me. He helps me with the dogs. He changes the cat litter boxes, and so I don't have to do it. Like he's a good guy. He's
It just feels. I mean, if I'm capable of doing something, then I don't really see unless I have a really good reason not to. Either I'm sick or I'm hurt or something like that. There's any way I can do something to somebody. I can't really think of a good reason why not to. That's how I was brought up. I mean, if there's any way I can be of any help to anybody, that's just how I was raised. It just doesn't feel right just not doing anything. I
yeah,
just can't I
yeah.
can't not do
Yeah, he
anything.
won't say no. I mean, especially like when the guys will come and answer, ask him like I hate to say it, but when Chase will, he kind of hesitates sometime, or
Linda.
even Tom, like like. But when on any of the females, like he's a sap. I hate to say it, or I mean, he's very sensitive. He's very good hearted. He's a guy that wants to come to the rescue of the women. I guess it's a yeah, and we do have a dishwasher, Eric. Yeah, he washes. Eric and I take turns doing the dishes. However, he does more.
She did the last dishes though, so I can't say I did the last
Yeah,
dishes.
so he does them more than me because he likes to give me a break. He just he worries about his mama a lot. He does. And yes, I do have good kids. I can't say anything bad about any of them. They all look out for me, especially. Who does the cooking? I do the majority of the cooking. Tom is a good cook. Tom will cook when he can, but since he works Monday through Friday and on an occasion Saturday, and sometimes he'll go in like at 6:30 in the morning, he won't get home until almost 7 at night. And for some odd reason, he sets his alarm clock for 3 o'clock in the morning, even though he doesn't need to go in until 6 or 6:30. So when he comes home from work, he's beat. So I usually like to try to have something prepared. But like on the weekends, he's been promising to make me a good batch of chicken parmigiana up. The last batch he made me was,
Maybe
oh my
maybe
God.
that'll be something for this weekend.
Well, we kind of have a busy weekend coming up, so I don't know if he'll want to do that. And plus, I didn't take the chicken out the thaw.
That's true.
So, but he is a good cook.
So is Abby.
Abby's a good cook. Well, Abby did go to culinary arts.
Yeah.
Um, Tom is good at cooking certain things, and I'm good. Like every Tom makes a taco salad that everybody goes nuts over. He also he
Broccoli
makes
and
a
cheese
broccoli
casserole.
and cheese casserole that everybody goes nuts over. Um,
Ham
me,
spread.
ham spread. He just made some homemade fresh ham spread. That probably the best ham spread he's ever made. He can cook good, but he when he was in college, he cooked for the whole campus. So I had to break him off of usually when he cooks like he's still cooking for a whole college campus instead of for just a family. So, but yeah, but yeah, we share the cooking and we each have our recipes that we like, and everybody says, hey, can you make that this time? And so, but is there any other questions here before we're going to be breaking off here that anybody has?
Cooking session stream one. You never know.
If I had a bigger kitchen and more room in my kitchen, I had actually thought of that because I'm one of those old fashioned cooks. I don't really go by recipes. I do like a pinch here and a handful of that and that type of cooking.
B squared. Never heard of ham spread. I need a show.
Ham spread B squared is when you get a good cut of ham. Um, like we get like the ham shanks, and you get like a good cut of ham, a really, really good ham, and you grind it all up, and then you add onions to it. You add salt and pepper, which depending on which brand of ham you get, some already has enough salt to it. You get dill relish, and mayo, and you mix it all together, and it makes a ham spread. And you just put it in between two slices of bread or a hamburger bun. Absolutely delicious.
Yeah, I think you would really like
It's
it.
really delicious.
And you are very welcome, Linda. I'm like I said, it wasn't perfect tonight, but I mean,
I think you did
that's
well. I mean, they've seen mine. I did only two documentary type ones, and
yeah.
like I kind of stammered. I still do now, but whatever. It's alive. It's my show. I don't care
Yeah.
how, as long as you're
It
getting
kind of
even.
B squared, yeah. I mean, you could say that. Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
yeah.
it really is B squared. It's very, very close to something like that. But it instead of having tuna or chicken in it, it has um, a good piece of like a ham shank or a good big chunk of ham, and you just grind it up and then mix the chopped up onion. You add your pepper and whatever spices you may want. Your dill. I like dill relish rather than regular relish because it has that little bit of tartness to it. Um, and then mayo. And we are mayo users. We don't like Miracle Whip and
Yeah, like mayo, like the
yeah,
real
mayo.
authentic, like
Yeah.
Hellman's and
And I
stuff like
don't
that.
like Duke's because Duke seems to have a little bit too much like vinegar taste to it. So I like Hellman's mayonnaise. So, but that's kind of, a little bit of that's the info on that.
Thank you,
So,
Cactus. I do appreciate that. And like I said, I'm probably whenever I come in here, which the more I come in here, I mean, this is my first real. I mean, I've been on podcasts before, but this is like the first one where
so
I'm like
you
center
kind of roll.
stage.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's gonna take a little bit of time for me because I'm not. I mean, I guess I'm kind of.
Linda, do you like cottage cheese and bacon? Because I have a real simple recipe. I do not like cottage cheese, but I'll tell you what, this recipe takes cottage cheese and I love it, and everybody in my family loves the recipe. So if okay, you love cottage cheese, okay. What you do is I like using the bow tie noodles, and you cook them like you regularly cook them. You get um, a pound of bacon and you cut it like in cubes, like little pieces. You fry it up for not all the grease off, but almost all of it, but you leave a little bit there. And then you get large, or it doesn't need to be large, curd cottage cheese. Once you cook your noodles, you drain them off, you put them in a pan. You fry up your bacon, you pour the bacon on top of the noodles, and then you add the 1 pound thing of cottage cheese. You mix it all up. Just let it sit there so that it can absorb all the flavor, and there it is. And it's really delicious. We call them cottage cheese noodles.
Yeah.
So that it's a real good recipe. I do not like cottage cheese, but I love cottage cheese noodles, and I think it's because of the bacon flavor that's added to it. Kind of takes away from the cottage cheese.
Yeah, I agree. I
So,
agree.
but we're going to call. We've been on here for about an hour and 13 minutes. Please, please, please think of topics. Now keep in mind, guys, not starting yet. Keep in mind, in I think probably tomorrow, our next Universal Yums is going to be sent out. So we're going to be doing that soon, and Eric will be part of that one
Yes.
again. And then Linda is sending me something, and me and Gabriella wants to do something coming up here soon, either baby food or something that we want to do, and then have a question and answer. So we'll try something, answer your questions, try something else, answer your questions.
But yeah, you will definitely be seeing more of me. And as I was about to say earlier, I'm not the best speaker, especially when speaking in front of a crowd of people. I know I'm just looking at a camera through a laptop, but I feel like I'm talking to every single one of you, and so I do need to be a little bit better. But I could talk. I mean, I have tons of stories. I mean, I could talk about ancient Mesopotamia. I could talk about historical figures like Joan of Arc or Charlemagne, stuff like that. I'm a big history buff. I can get into history. I'm a movie buff. I can get into movies basically based on supernatural or horror or
How about Madame Curie? Somebody like that, Madame Curie.
but yeah, you'll be seeing more of me on these podcasts for sure. It's just a matter of just picking what topic I want to do next.
Cactus, I'm reading yours. Yeah, I hope to see more of Eric with which, like he said, food topics. How about this thing, guys? On next Thursday, when Abby and I do our Thursday coffee talk, how about if we do share a recipe night? And that'll be the topic for that week. And I'm sure Abby will, because Abby loves cooking too. In fact, she just came over yesterday with homemade cheese bread that she had made from scratch. So
you know what else we could do, Mom? We can do that on a community tab on the channel. We can actually make a poll. We can make a poll of what our topic, whether it be me talking about something or you talk about something, and you guys can actually vote. We'll list. I'll come up with topics that I want to talk about, and we'll have those choices on the poll, and yins can vote on what you want me to talk about.
I like this too. Listen to this. Yeah, a bucket for the next foodie challenge would be good. We might need it because I'll tell you what, my stomach, like that night, I know I had to take a ton of Tums through the night because, wow, that mixture of some of that stuff was just.
That stuff from the Universal, I only had a few of the stuff. I didn't eat all of it yet, but that was it wreaked havoc on my stomach.
I think there was only like 2 things in there that was really yucky, but most of the stuff in there was really
It was good, but man, it was kind of.
It was well, you figure you got your garlic in with your sour stuff, and then with your sweet stuff. Yeah, so you had that whole mixture in there.
Tons of different flavor profiles that it just leaves the body.
So I don't know. I'll see if Gabriella will come on with me, and me and her can do a real talk on Sunday night. I will probably try. I'm gonna hope to try maybe tomorrow afternoon to get mine in because we do have an investigation tomorrow night, and so but we'll go on there and we'll do a poll thing too for Eric in particular and for Abby and me for Thursday night. So Pepto-Bismol. There's a story about Tums I can take, and I had to that night. Pepto-Bismol, everybody in the family except for Tom that I know of, if we take it, it makes us throw up almost immediately.
Yeah, and Pepto-Bismol is one of those things you never forget the flavor of. I mean, there's nothing like Pepto-Bismol.
No. I'll eat a whole bottle of Tums any day over even one little sip of Pepto-Bismol. So, but with that being said, guys, you guys have always been the most awesome, loyal fans that we've had. I really wish we could see more people coming in and get the channel built up. But I mean, that's going to take, I'm still pretty new on here yet.
It's going to take time. I mean, it's just, as long as we have our foundation here and, you know, we got good people watching.
We do. So
and then the respect is mutual. We love you guys, and I know how much you guys love us. So
and spread the word, guys. You know, we'd like people to subscribe and like the videos and that because you guys are so loyal, and that's how it all happens with spreading the word. But without you, we wouldn't be here. Well, we enjoy what we do, though. So.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
We're gonna kind of call it a night here then, because like I said, it's going on almost an hour and a half now. But you guys have been so fantastic as usual.
And thank you all so much for being here and listening to what I had to uncover about Vlad and his history and the mythology behind that. I cannot thank you guys enough. And I know Mom said some stuff too that was very informative as well. And I'm just thankful to be here tonight, being able to share all this with you.
Yeah, we'll have Eric on. Where I'm trying to, I know this channel here is supposed to be mainly my solo channel, but I did say when I announced this channel that I would have a lot of guests on, and of course, my kids are going to be my special guest always. So, but I'm glad that you guys, and
You're welcome, Linda.
I knew you guys would enjoy Eric because he's very, very smart. He's very informative, and he does a lot of research. So with that being said, guys, we're going to say good night, and we will catch you again soon. And as always, we will catch you on the other side. Good night, guys.
Good night, everybody.